An unprecedented idea, never tried before. But you know what? It's the right answer.
Disagreements about religion had been the causes of war in Europe through most of the 16th and 17th centuries.
The great trauma of European history was the religious carnage that led to newer and newer forms of torture and of slaughter, all in the name of God.
6 of the 13 colonies were settled by religious refugees. The Puritans who settled Massachusetts did not tolerate other religions. Virginia, my state, had an official religion from 1619 until the Revolutionary War. Dissenters were not obliged to participate, but they did have to pay for it with their taxes.
One of the great works of the French Enlightenment was Voltaire's Letters from the English Nation, talking about the superiority of the system in England over that of France. And he said, and the framers knew he had said it, if there were one religion in England, there would be tyranny. If there were two, they would cut each other's throats. But there are 30, so they live happily and in peace.
If you would just read the First Amendment for me.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion
or prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
One says that government may not disfavor religion by interfering with its free exercise. The other says that government may not favor religion by establishing religion. Many people refer to that as the idea of separation of church and state.
Nobody else had created a government in which there was freedom of religion, separation of church and state.
Once you establish the most important area of freedom of speech, religious freedom of speech, all other freedom of speech followed.
Resistance is justified when people are occupied.
We have so many examples around the world where we have totalitarian regimes. Freedom of speech, I think, speaks to our core values.
True totalitarian government wants to control your speech and your ideas and your mind. That's why that zone has to be protected for anything else to be protected.
Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech.
That wall! That wall!
I think it's pretty well established that one of the risks we take as American citizens is being offended.
As Americans, we have a strong belief, grounded in the First Amendment, that no government, national, state, or local, should be able to tell us what we must say or must not say.
This is the single most counterintuitive idea in human history. The idea that it's good for society and good for us as individuals to have to encounter offensive speech and hate speech. That idea has always been under siege and always will be.
And so we end up having to protect a lot of, frankly, annoying speech in order to keep the government out of the act of choosing what we may say or must not say. But in the 20th century, the government got into the act. Some states and localities tried to ban as indecent books, movies, plays, magazines. Those items were then marketed as having been banned in Boston or wherever. The Supreme Court heard a series of cases trying to set a standard for what could be deemed indecent and censored, but eventually gave up. The result? No standard, no censorship.
the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Tell me what America looks like! This is what America looks like! Tell me what America looks like! This is what America looks like!
One time I was testifying in Congress, and a member of Congress said, "You know, Professor, we all know how much you love the Constitution, but, you know, the framers didn't have to deal with politics like this vicious political environment we live in." And I almost laughed.
And not surprisingly, one of the first big fights over the Bill of Rights is a fight over the meaning of free expression.
The framers wrote the Constitution. The first Congress added the Bill of Rights. And soon after that, the Congress passed the notorious Alien and Sedition Acts.
It prevents people from criticizing the president. It prevents people from criticizing the president's cabinet.
The Congress passes it, the president signs it, and the courts uphold it. A trifecta of tyranny.
It was outlawing dissent 7 years after the First Amendment was adopted.
President John Adams jails journalists for violating the Sedition Act. They're essentially political prisoners.
Americans are funny people. They tend to take their liberties for granted until they see them being threatened, and then they pounce. They tell people in no uncertain terms that their liberties are very important and that they are God-given, and you had better respect them. That's the American way.
John Adams is voted out, Thomas Jefferson is voted in, and the prisoners are pardoned.
It was not a very good beginning for the country. It's amazing that we eventually lived up to the document.
In the Virginia Declaration of Rights, George Mason wrote,
"The freedom of the press is one of the great bulwarks of liberty and can never be restrained but by despotic governments."
Nothing changes. Well, the technology changes, but nothing fundamental. If it were not for the press, the people would not know what their government is up to.
Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press.
If you take a look at all the great reforms that we have had over history, the vast majority of them have come not from Congress or any president, they've come from the press uncovering scandals, corruptions.
And you can bet there'd be a lot more corruption if it were not for fear of exposure by the press.
The First Amendment gives to American newspaper men and women an unparalleled degree of freedom. Looked at on the global canvas, we live in a kind of Eden for the press.
That combination of free speech and a free press really defines the United States more than any other right.